We all get called into sessions, and people say, and you say, well, what do you want me to bring? And they say, well, just bring everything, and then you need to get a truck.
Yeah, several trucks.
Yeah, but what would be really, if you get called to do, a pop session? Nowadays in London, around
it's
in
about
London.
information, isn't it? So you try and extract as much information as you can prior to the thing. You try and do your homework. You try and learn something about the artist, what they're like historically, where they might be trying to go with it now. Hopefully they will send you some music up front. Yeah. So that you can make some notes and have some options and ideas. If they don't, then you're on the fly. But I mean, the standard things I suppose you would take would be, a box of hand percussion would be, probably the standard thing. And then you'd work from there. So if it was an orchestral thing, obviously you might have to hire some stuff in. If it was a more Latin thing, you'd go down that. If it was a more Middle Eastern thing, or maybe it's a soundtrack thing where you just go in with waterphone and wind wands or whatever. So I think every situation is completely different.
Yeah, that's very true, yeah.
And you just have to try and, a lot of it is people management.
Yeah.
And getting on with people, and that's a big part of it, I think, because some sessions don't go that well if you haven't got that connection. And education, trying to explain the potential of what you can do. To producers whose specialism isn't percussion, and they might only know percussion as being, tambourine and shaker or whatever. Yeah. And you get to the end of a session, and the producer goes, "I'm just going to make a cup of tea. Can you do a quick tambourine take for me?" Doesn't even listen to it, So in that instance, what I try and do is like do an arrangement of the song as I'm doing it. So give them different options in the verses, in the choruses, in the middle eight maybe, and just build throughout the thing. So that if at some point later on when they're mixing, they turn around and go, "Oh, all I've got is 16th notes all the way through the track." No, in fact, you've got 3 or 4 or half a dozen different patterns throughout the track to choose from, so that they can then slot it in at a later stage. Yeah. I think that's kind of effective.
Yeah, recently I did a session, an album, and there was nothing. I went in completely blind, and they wanted, all I knew is they wanted percussion on quite a bit of the album, and I went in there, and then they played it me, and then I had to play, which was, I don't always have to do this, but they asked for variations. So what they asked was, yeah, that's great, but can you maybe do it another way? So maybe just conga patterns, maybe doing, because it's a pop thing, maybe not playing the slaps on the downbeats, maybe they want them on the upbeats, or they want them somewhere else. Not playing as much palm tip in between, so it doesn't actually get in the way of the hi-hat. Talk about frequencies and being too busy as well. Have you done that?
I totally resonate with that. And I think when I first started, because I was excited and I was young and I didn't necessarily know, but I just wanted to throw everything I had at every session I did. Yeah, sure. Check what this does. Check this out. Yeah. But slowly working with good producers, they kind of helped me understand a bit more about space. It was an education for me, and it's okay to be confident to just play a tambourine on the 2 and the 4 on the chorus and not feel the need to do multiple instrumentation. You sort of have to let go of your ego a little bit. And like I totally agree with you about trying when you can, depending on the personnel, maybe being able to give them a few options with like maybe 2 or 3 shakers, played slightly different feel. I mean, even we all probably kind of learn to play a shaker our own little way, but we all kind of understand that thing that producers go, "Oh, I love that sexy kind of feel when you play the shaker, when you kind of give it that lilt." But quite a lot of pop records
don't want it.
It's very tight, straight 16th, and that used to really hurt me when I was, in my early 20s. I was like, can't I just, but check what this does. But eventually I kind of went, okay, no, it's a pop record. I've got to understand how this has got to work, and I learned something, So, I mean, probably, I think it was Alex Acuna who said, somebody asked him a similar question, like, what would you take to a session, or what have you used the most? And I kind of agree that pretty much shakers and tambourines have been the mainstay of many of the sessions I've done. So it's always a joy then when somebody goes, no, you can, the door's open, play some congas, bring some other things, an oudou, whatever. Occasionally you get to take it further. But taking pride in the simple is something I think I've learned over.
Definitely.
And being aware of space. There's that story about a famous percussionist in LA who went on his first session, and he'd learnt all these conga chops, and he gets into the room and he just blasts all the conga chops. They said, "Oh, a bit simpler," so we kind of did the same thing again. They said, "Okay, that's fine, thank you, we've got it." So he went and had lunch. He's loading his gear out into the car park, and a mate of his is coming in. He says, What are you doing here? Oh, I'm coming to a session with so-and-so.
Brilliant.
I've just done that session. No, I haven't. Yeah. You learn quickly, don't you?
You learn quick. Yeah.
I tell you what changed for me a lot, my attitude to sessions, is when I started doing a lot more of my own projects and putting things together and finding that outlet for, you know, what I wanted to do musically, which wasn't necessarily, you know, catered for on sessions. And it meant that I could completely separate the two approaches and kind of just think of myself as it's a guttural thought, but I'm just like the producer's sound module, you know what I mean? You go in there and, you know, you press the buttons. I mean, if you want me to compose, if you want me to actually write parts, then that's a different discussion. Otherwise, you've got to know what the buttons to press on the sound module. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. You know, and I know we're talking about having the right attitude and all that, but I think slightly differently to that. You know, always been a little bit controversial with a lot of people that I work for in that way. But you know, I think people have got to know what, if you want the best out of something, you know, if you want the best out of your new car, you don't put fairy liquid in the petrol tank, you know. Yeah. And so I think if people know what they want, you know, and otherwise it just, you know what you want, tell me. You know, I remember doing a thing with Phil Manzanera in the studio. He was brilliant, creative mind, and we ended up taking the AC unit front of that off and the lamp. We went and got the dustbin from outside. But it was brilliant, a brilliant creative session. In the beginning, I thought, you know, what's he on about? You know, it's ridiculous. But then it was just brilliant. It was just like an amazing thing, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be amazing all the time as well. You know, a lot of work you do. You know, in fact, but those sort of situations, they're the gems, aren't they? I started to look forward to that. Like maybe out of 20 sessions, there'll be one where you really got to be who you are. Surprised, you know, sort of surprised that you can. I did a Level 42 album, and the first thing I did was Batar on the opening of a track.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
that's you wouldn't expect that, you know. And I was like, "Are you sure, guys?" Because I just had it with me, and I think, you know, I know them because I was, you know, but I just sort of pulled it out and was doing a thing. They went, "Now," I'm like, "Yeah, great. I'm gonna get away with this," and I did, you know. Yeah.
Great.
Sounded Batar with it.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh no.
It just keeps going.
Oh no. So as far as doing your own creative stuff, I mean, I was on the train coming. I was listening to Boom, which is obviously an amazing album that you did with Luis Conti, and that really, for me, that breaks down lots and lots of. It doesn't really don't break down barriers, but what it does is it crosses over different musical influences, certainly percussive wise. Yeah. Because obviously playing tabla along with rumba tracks, for me is just you know it's you're really standing on sacred ground with some purists. Yeah. But for me, I love it. I love it.
Totally.
I love the story where Aeto went to Cuba. And they all gave him a hard time because he was playing the clave the wrong way around. But everybody was dancing, you know, and so it doesn't matter, you know. It's important to
riding backwards on a horse.
It was like he was probably playing it with his Portuguese butchers slippers, but it was like, you know, it was great. But and they stopped him. He said, you know, he wishes they would all just forget about that and everybody just get on, and it's music, and if it feels good and it feels right, then that's what it's all about.
I think that's really true. I think, and it's nice. I think in, you know, with the Calave Police, and I think we all know what we mean. You know, the hardcore Cuban Puerto Rican story, totally valuable, very important. It is. But I think the younger generations, what's good is I think they're really opening up to that, which is good. I think that's become a little bit less of a thing. I mean, you know, if you're in a salsa band and it's hardcore, you know, Montuno, then it makes sense to make it feel a certain way, and I get that and I respect that. But I think absolutely we're here to break rules. I think all of us, that's kind of our journey. I'm like, can I make this work? As long as it feels good.
The thing is, when you go to, I mean, I did the Havana Drum Festival a few years ago, and I kind of compare like being there and the vast amount of work I've done in India with classical Indian musicians. When you go to those countries, actually all of the you know, majority certainly of the younger and, you know, even the last generation have got a completely open mind. What the people that don't often have an open mind, the Clave Police, as you rightly said, but people that have gone and studied in countries and come back and felt this is the only way you can do it. So, but when you actually go to the countries and you work with them, in Cuba, I was doing tabla and loads of different stuff with artists there, and they love it.
Yeah,
they're like into the rhythms. They want to know how the rhythms work, and you want to start incorporating it into their thing. So it's an interesting zone, actually.
Very much so. Yeah.
The other thing I was listening to Miles's album as well, which is a fantastic album. I mean, how many albums have you had out, Miles? Have you had it always?
Well, that's kind of a solo one, but
album,
but
it's fantastic.
The other stuff is like.
I mean, just talking about from a percussive point of view.
Yeah, that's very much.
Yeah, from a percussive point of view.
Thanks,
fantastic.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Well,
I'm really breaking a lot of rules there. There's even with the rumba stuff, I'm not doing it exactly the way it's done. I didn't sit there and write it all out and make sure there was. I just trying to get the feel across, and trying to give it my own.
And do your own thing.
Do my own thing with it. Bring.
Why
something.
would you try and compete with?
Exactly, I can't. That's what they do, and they do it so brilliantly.
Absolutely.
But if I can get that, I love the feel of it. So let me find my way to interpret
spirit
that.
as well. Your individual spirit comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very lucky to have done an album. I did an album with Pete already and Luis Conti, and we did a second album which is going to come out this year. With Mino Sanello and Pete and Luis Conti, but the weird thing is we actually got Mino to record his parts while he was on tour with Marcus Miller. So I went and picked him up from the hotel and we took him to studio in Manchester. Great. And I just got my an array of percussion instruments out because he didn't have anything. I thought we're going to play some tracks that Pete's already played on and Luis Conti's already played on and it's going to be great. He's going to play all over it. And he got there and he goes like this. There's a microphone and he's just sort of like that. Yeah, go on then, go, and started singing on it. And it was like.
Great.
And it was like, just brought all this percussion in. But it sounded great. But what it is, it's got his signature on it.
Yeah, of course.
He's got that
sound.
Signature, that sound that he's got,
He's great,
Which is amazing. Ferg, you're always busy.
What have I been doing recently? I've been back in pop world recently. I've been doing 80s, been doing ABC at the weekend, Jimmy Somerville last week. Some orchestral stuff I've been doing. I did a good one earlier in the year, did Pete Townsend.
Fantastic.
Just ducking and diving, and I've been lucky to do it. I think the thing for me that's worked is rather than being a specialist in one thing, I've always done a lot of different areas. So I've done the whole orchestral thing, and I've done the pure pop thing, and folk thing, and the hybrid thing we were talking about before, and that's always worked. In that I've always had work coming in from it. So if one area is particularly quiet, there's usually something else going on elsewhere. And I think that's a valid thing for people beginning to play and wondering how can I ever make a living? Because versatility in that way. Because if you're just purely like the fastest double bass drum player, your lifespan is short, and you're just waiting for the next person to come along who's faster. And it's difficult to make a living, and of course, trying to make a living is up and down. So the ability to kind of
you've always been busy though. I mean, I've known you for a long time, and every time, it's...
And you never turn anything down. I think that's the thing, and I think, you often get called to do something and you think, I'm not too sure about that. And then 3 weeks into it, you're trying to persuade all your mates that it's the best thing ever, because you buy into it, and you kind of, you rehearse it and you understand it, and, so... Yeah.
Do you read?
Read.
You do. Do you read?
Newspapers.
Oh wow! You read.
I read, but I don't really do reading gigs.
Right. How much do you feel that's?
Well, I don't really enjoy it, so I don't do it.
No.
But for me, enjoying what I do artistically and musically is like number one.
Yeah.
So I don't really enjoy reading music unless I've written my own parts out. And, So
it's hard.
I don't enjoy it,
so
I don't want to do it. I don't want to be a plumber.
It's hard. That's the challenge in it, is being able to read it on the first or second or third attempt and to get some feel into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're so occupied with all the nuances of it. I did something where I went out to Spain and played with an orchestra, and I walked in and there was a music like that I was given at the beginning of the day, and I kind of scanned through it and thought, was there anything particularly difficult? And there was Pirates of Penzance was in there, and that first 90 seconds was just orchestral snare drum. And I kind of looked at it and thought, I need to look at that at lunch.
Yeah, right.
And the session started, and the conductor went, right, Fergus, Pirates of Penzance. The first thing out of the box, and I didn't know anybody else in the room.
Wow.
So the whole thing started, here I am, I'm like 50 seconds in, and he stops it. And he goes, "Oh, Fergus, bar 87, there's an accent on the third beat."
Wow.
And I just "Oh, sorry, it's not written in my part."
Yeah,
and I
right.
pretended to write it in.
Oh, brilliant.
Well played. Yeah.
And I did it again. But
Brilliant.
it's not too often that happens.
No,
but that's a big challenge. And I think with reading, you have to do it every day.
And the moral of the story there is you have to take your own pen.
Yeah.
Pen and paper is the thing
So
you
I
take to
haven't
say.
got, I haven't got
Pen
page
and
2.
paper.
I mean, the thing when I started out playing, I was depping for a great percussionist in Manchester who taught me as well, Max Beasley, Senior, which is the great Max Beasley's father, and who's like family, and he used to play with this band called Loose Change, and they were all great session musicians in Manchester when there was a session scene in Manchester, like the BBC and ITV, and they were all people that used to get the calls to do that, and we used to play Azimuth songs and all those great tunes, Sparagyra and all those great tunes,
Right.
but it was all written out.
Yeah.
And I hadn't read for a while, and I remember him giving me the first step and going, "I can't do the gig." It was only a little local pub. "Can you do it?" And I remember them giving me a pad. They gave me a pad and they started shouting out numbers for the songs, and I'm going, "Oh yeah, Rio Funk," and I'm going, "Well, these are all heavy duty tunes," and it's just counting, and it was like that was really like a real learning curve for me. It was great that I did that for a long time, and I think one of the hardest gigs that I've done, and I'll be really honest with you, not because he's sat here, or a couple of them, is one of them was for the great, amazing film composer Craig Armstrong, which Pete couldn't do something, so he put me on the gig, which was amazing to do because I'm a big fan of Craig Armstrong, the composer. The second one was depping for this guy on kit for Vanessa May in Jerusalem, which was like, because that was another parts gig.
Yeah.
And without Stuart Ross on bass holding my hand all the way through it, I don't think I could have got through that.
Right.
There was no rehearsal. It was just a flight out there. It was like when we got there, it was straight to bed, wake up in the morning, and the gig was in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It was on an electronic kit, and then some of it was on Darabuka. So it was like being accessible, and like what Fergus was saying before, doing different things, playing different instruments, and trying to not specialise in one thing, but trying to broaden the horizon.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that, and luckily I got through that gig. I don't think I'd really want to go into that because I think I still have nightmares about that. But it was a great experience,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
so glad that I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad because after that, it gave me a lot of confidence then to be able to go on and do other things.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. So. Well,
I hear
that was definitely a learning curve.
I mean, you certainly don't have to read all the time. I mean, in fact, when you do most sessions, there aren't, or particularly pop sessions, there aren't charts there.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I find it a really useful facility if I'm like listening to radio or something or whatever it is, and I hear something, I think, "Oh, that's a great groove," and I just quickly write it.
Yeah,
down.
transcribing.
And
Yeah.
transcribing
That's a different
stuff,
thing altogether,
and that's the kind of that's the facility.
For
which
me,
certainly
I
comes
think
through reading.
transcribing is the most, probably for me anyway, the most important aspect of learning an instrument. Whether it was with various percussion or tabla or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, transcribing it was the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because you spend so much time within that little
Absolutely.
area of
yeah.
music, in extreme detail.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember seeing when I was 16, my first time to New York, and I saw Airto playing with Gil Evans. My dad took me to watch it, and all he had was a pair of shoes, 4 cowbells, and a tambourine. And I was like, "That's the percussionist. That's his setup. That's what I mean." But I never forgot that. I thought, if there's a way in which I can work, and if I was given that and had to make that work, I would like to meet that challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do still try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get some clogs. That's
Yeah, clogs.
That's
Yeah.
the first
Yeah,
thing.
It's got to be
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of
Amazing.
sessions that we do now. I mean, a lot of the time. I did a gig recently where it's different because I was playing with an orchestra, and that was like a pop gig with doing all those great Sister Sledge tunes, and but the parts were all written out. So there was an orchestral percussionist on the gig, great drummer, and then myself on playing congas and timbales and bongo. But all the parts are actually, wrote out. So it's like it's quite strict because they need to hear, the artist needs to hear those things.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it's great when I'd much rather, I know all those songs anyway, playing all those great tunes, but I'd much rather be able to have a slightly freer role some.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. It's like there was all charts for the whole band.
Yeah.
He had nothing. He just had a table of madness, and just was.
That's fantastic.
Free floating all the way through the gig.
But that's that.
And it was a real eye opener because
the creative
yeah,
mind.
exactly. And I was thinking, surely it's all written out, and I very quickly realised it wasn't. I'm like, oh, okay. Free reign, but it was musical, even this close.
The first guy in Weather Report, do you remember him?
Oh, Dom Romeo or the other guy?
Maybe not in the same way that Airto.
Yeah, same kind of vibe though. Yeah,
Manolo Vadrino.
Well, Mano is
he's
incredible. Yeah. All those people.
No, but there was a guy with the shoes. And
I think that was Dom Romeo. Yeah, I think that was Brazilian. I think
Dom
he was.
Romeo.
Yeah, he was one of the first. And he was. It was the shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. That's brilliant. Whatever works.
But there's so much. I remember going to see.
Some soul.
Yeah. He's done it again. Too quick. Yeah.
I remember going to see Hermeto Pascoal, the Brazilian Ronnie's, and the percussionist just had a pandero and triangle. Yeah. But you've never heard anybody play a triangle.
Yeah, exactly.
He's slept with the things since he was.
Right.
Just like. And the way Airto used to play pandero as well, with all the
amazing.
breathing on it. And
that's what we used to do in India, is people just with one instrument.
Of course,
with a gatam or tabla, kanjira, or morsing, or it's quite. It was interesting for me in the beginning, because it was very difficult to listen to. Once I really got into the Indian thing, it was so stripped bare, just sitar and tabla, or and then to get back into, more denser, bass guitar, keyboard.
Westernized music.
It was really hard for me to, because I just listened to that for 6 years, really. And then to get back into...
I can imagine.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, find your way back in, because your role as a tabla player is so integral in like a small raga sort of setup, you know. So then, the sort of size of the sound of tabla is so vast. Yeah. All the frequencies is incredible. So to find a way, and you've done a very good job, mate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I can imagine that would be quite tough. Yeah. It's such a signature sound.
Yeah.
But you've done gigs when I remember seeing you playing with Massive Attack. And you were supporting Massive Attack on a tour with an artist. What was her name?
Martina,
and that was a really interesting gig for you on that as well, because you had some.
Yeah, we had a duo project for it was a couple of years. I think we did over 300 gigs on it. But so we had to construct the thing just out of two people. Yeah, so it was. But the other thing we said to it was we were going to use different instruments in every track. So I had a very interesting setup of like a very small bass drum with a cajon and a snare drum, tabla, played a bit of guitar, played some didgeridoo. She played log drums, keyboards, sang. Yeah, and she's very theatrical looking. So it was a successful thing. But I think not quite the same as. But I know what you mean. The use of space. Yeah. And you kind of we've all sat in Wembley Arena or somewhere and played a kick drum and it's filled the room. Yeah. And it's kind of like. Okay, all this other stuff, we've got to cram it in somewhere and try and...
Very true.
I think that's the perfect music making scenario, is a duo. Not only, in terms of sounds, but in terms of connectivity.
And in terms of profit.
In profit as well. There's profit in that, you get £17 instead of £14.80.
But as far as that setup's concerned, that you were playing there, more of a hybrid setup, so like percussion and a bit of kit as well, and so you were creating the parts of the drummer and creating sort of the percussive parts as well, so filling the holes or the frequencies, the sounds. That's very interesting, because most people now, a lot of drummers I know are being asked, and percussionists, to some of the smaller gigs that we all get, the bread and butter gigs, if you like. We don't want to really say that, but the sort of smaller gigs that we all do, that where we get a regular work from around the town, where we're taking a small bass drum and a cajon and a conga and some bongos, and be a small snare drum. It's all changed really, because I remember growing up it wasn't really like that. There was always like a drummer and a percussionist, and now people want different flavours when they're playing.
There was less percussion available really as well. And,
very much so.
There's a huge variety of stuff available now.
Yeah, from all the companies.
Well, that was the thing.
Yeah.
You just couldn't find percussion when I started. You know, I couldn't wait to go to America for the first time to tour, to actually be able to go to half of the shops, and, you know, in New York.
And you bought that as well, didn't
and
you?
I bought everything.
You do. You hoard everything. Yeah, spend all your tour money on gear. Yeah.
But you just couldn't
I think
find
we've
it.
all done
Now
that.
the internet, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
have it delivered, you know, the following day.
Yeah.
It was so hard to get a cajon.
Yeah, it was.
It was so hard to get
Now
a
the
cajon.
variations.
I think the first one that I ever saw was World Beat. You know, there was a World Beat cajon, and I saw it in a magazine, but nobody had it. You couldn't order one. Nobody. And now look at every company does cajons. You know, and there's so many to choose from. I mean, for me, you know, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but you know, I just think it's gone a little bit over the top. I think that as long as you get a good sounding box, which is what it is, and it's got all the right frequencies, bass frequencies, and I just think that's
these.
Of course,
And
of course
this.
it is. Yeah.
I mean, where it's valuable is when you've got really different ones, like the Peruvian one, you know, the bass one that you play on the sides.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
You know, that's very.
I think it takes you a long time to realise what a good sounding instrument is.
That's true. Yeah,
I mean, the
true.
amount of kind of just on a simple level, the amount of tambourines I went through before I actually realised what a good tambourine was. You know, so you buy one, and you think, oh no, this is better, this is better, and 20 years later you think, oh no, that's actually what a tambourine should sound like. And the same with all instruments, and you know, it's a real journey of kind of just enlightenment, if you like. You know, realising, self-realisation of what everything sounds like and how everything should work together. I think there's a lot in that.
I agree. I've bought a few cymbals over the years, and then I've like maybe given them away or sold them. I haven't sold very much, so I'm a bit of a hoarder. We were talking about that earlier. We know we all do it. But now, on reflection, there's a few that I think, oh man, I'm 15, 20 years down the line. I think I'm a slightly more improved musician. I probably shouldn't have let go of that thing. That cymbal that I thought wasn't that great, maybe it was fantastic, and it was these that weren't working. I think I've done a bit of that.
And these,
and these, you know, like how best to draw out.
Yeah, and it's like you'd identify it now in the music that you're playing. I've done that as well. I've done that and got on a session and I've been playing a shaker, and they've gone, have you got another one? I'll play this one. And as I'm playing this one, like this one, I'm thinking, this is quietly louder, more dense. This is softer. And then they go, and I'm thinking to myself, I wish I'd have brought the other one that's on my kitchen table at the moment. You know,
of course,
of course.
But it's I mean, with gear, is there anything your favourite piece of percussion gear? Miles, go. Anything that you
probably an Udu.
An Udu.
Probably. It's not necessarily something I'm the greatest exponent of, but as an instrument, its versatility, I think the, you know, we were talking about going on the journey of finding things. When I was quite young, I got to go to New York, and I'd seen Minu playing the Udu with Sting.
Fantastic.
And that blew my mind. I was like, what is that thing? I have to, I have to have that.
Fantastic.
And so that was my journey. It took me about 2-3 years before I eventually found one, and I got the Giorgini one, you know.
I was just going to
That's the one, you know, and I waited, you know, and so I have a real love affair with that. It's such a complete instrument. It's not that distant from tabla, and it's, you know, as you know, and Gatam, and you know, that whole thing.
It's amazing the first time you hear Udu, though, isn't it? It's really, I remember seeing Nana Vasconcelos.
I was just going to say him, with a
couple of
glass.
It's sat at the front, and he had that and a couple of wood blocks.
Exactly.
And he did a solo on that, and I'm like,
and you're like, you can do that.
What was that?
Yeah, exactly.
And the way he used to do that kind of loop station stuff before loop stations were having 4 mics. With different delays. Build up a whole kind of.
Exactly.
He was doing the loop station stuff.
I mean, I love all the instruments, but I think maybe that's the, you know, often, you know, there'll be the one I'll just sit down and I'll just play, and I'm just happy to play. It's a satisfying instrument. Very satisfying instrument, very sort of self-contained. So
it's a hard one because I get asked this a lot in interviews, and I always end up, you know, saying
changing your mind.
No, I say I don't have one because it's all my family. That's what I normally say in interviews. No, but it's true.
I'd agree with that.
Trying to choose your favourite child.
It's true. It's true. And also they all have kind of different you know, different applications in different arenas. I mean, in terms of learning and study and complexity and you know, finesse, and I suppose you probably end up being the tabla would be my was the instrument that's taken me the most to get anything out of, you know, over the years. So it's a tough one. Tough one. That and the egg shaker, of course.
Thank you. Fergus?
Well, it's funny. Oud is one of my favourite instruments. Is in fact the liquid oud. You know, the liquid oud that moves around, and I find myself playing that a lot at home.
Yeah.
I've got into playing hand pan quite a lot recently. Vast hand pans and kalimbas. But I think probably my favourite instrument is that pitch bendable rototom.
Oh, cool.
Brilliant.
I love that. You know,
great.
It's just an old Remo rototom with a pedal on it, and it has the same effect as a talking drum, or like playing loads of concert toms. You know, and often find when you're doing a session, producers are looking for different ways to get from one section to another.
Yeah.
So how do I get from the A section to a B section, but without doing a standard drum fill, or without doing without doing a cymbal swell or whatever?
Great.
And that often gives me that option.
Great
you know,
transition instrument.
Great transition instrument. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
And I think. I like playing that.
Oh, nice.
My favourite percussion instruments are really the gifts that people give me, to be really honest. You know, I've been very lucky that all my friends are percussionists. The gift of music, of course, the best answer. No, the thing that Miles is about to give me. No, I've had percussion instruments from my dear friends Louis Conti, Bashiri Johnson, Pete, yourself over the years, but those kind of things, because I would never have sourced them. So really, what that is for me is they're great gifts, because it's not really something that's manufactured. You know, it's like when you're out and I mean those little rattles that you got in was it Sri Lanka? No, you didn't go to Sri Lanka. Where did you go to? You and Pam?
In Burma.
The little wooden things, from they got that little nail thing.
The metal ones.
Yeah, the metal things. Yeah.
Wooden metal things.
Wooden metal things.
Have you got them now?
Wooden metal plastic things.
They're from Burma.
From Burma, yeah. You know, those things. I mean, I've never been to Burma. I'd love to go, but I mean, those things I would never have sourced them.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I love the congas. You know, I love the Pearl folkloric congas, which I use all the time. You know, I'm well known for using those. But conga drums, I love conga drums, but it's about the toys and about the small things for me personally. It's about colours, like we were talking about before. Dave Hassel, who's a friend of mine who's in Manchester, for all of his students at the Royal Northern College of Music, has a bag, makes everybody go out and gets a bag for life from one of the supermarkets, and in that he makes them buy a tambourine, a cabassa, a shaker, a pair of claves. And a triangle, yeah. And he has a triangle, and they have an aguero, and they have to have that. I think that's a great starting point.
Interesting, yeah.
That's
a lot of homework right there.
Yeah, that's it. It is, isn't it? Yeah. To sit down and study that.
Yeah,
that's the first 20 years.
Yeah,
really.
I remember my first ever session was with a band called Thunder. Do you remember Thunder?
Oh yeah.
Of course, yeah.
And that was just one box of. There was a couple of drums and stuff like that. But one box of hand percussion. That was it. There was nothing. I didn't own anything else. So it wasn't like I had a big collection at the beginning.
You wouldn't really associate percussion with them, would you? It's kind of
no, it's funny because I was going in. I had it was tabla and loads of funny things. I went in the studio and it's all like skull and crossbones everywhere, and that they'd done the. Do you remember Jacob's down in Jacob's studio down in Aldership?
I never went there, but
yeah. And skull and crossbones. There's me tabla and me shakers,
Egg shakers.
I mean, I think that I would say that it touches on something else, that when you go with whatever instrument you have, or instruments you have, that you kind of know them. You understand them. You understand what they can do, their role, so that you don't get caught out. That
true, actually,
like be prepared. And there's a little bit sort of like the young session guy coming up, girl. Simple things like quality of your instruments, the care with which you have for your instruments. I'm just trying to pass on that kind of. It should be about you playing. It should be about the music, and it is. But turning up with good flight cases, turning up with good equipment that you care for, showing that you have pride in the thing that you do. I think I've noticed that made quite a difference to some of the work that I got. And sometimes I'd take something out of the box that I hadn't really practiced, and sort of think, it'd be cool to put that on there. And I realised very quickly I wasn't that well versed in that thing, even down to Guerrero playing Guerrero at a certain tempo. If you haven't really worked at that, as we know, you can get very quickly caught out. So, sort of smart mental preparation,
No, the opposite for me with that was I was doing an A.R. Rahman session, and we'd been a few days into it, and I thought I was itching to get to the tabla, you know.
Yeah.
So finally we got to the end of the you know, few days recording, and he said, "Oh, we're about a tabla on this." So I start playing tabla, and then he comes over the can and says, "Oh, it's too Indian." Can you make it sound less Indian? So
Okay.
So I tried slightly different technique, you know. And so no, it's still too Indian. In the end, after 3 or 4 goes, I've had to turn them round the other way and play them like bongos, and that was what he wanted.
Wow.
So it was,
Okay,
it's
there
an
you go.
inversion of you know, you're right in what you say, but this is a funny inversion of that.
Yeah, there you go.
So they wanted that essence, but they didn't.
He didn't even want that. He wanted this. Yeah, maybe you're right. Actually, yeah, he wanted that kind of flavour. Maybe.
Yeah, the flavour.
But it didn't even sound like tabla.
But you have the skill set to be able to do that. That's the thing.
Actually,
you have
I
the
didn't
knowledge.
need any tabla.
Well, not as much. Yeah, that's true. I suppose you just turn around.
Great, give him my number. That's fantastic.
But you had to be open-minded enough to do it.
True, exactly.
That's the
That's
thing.
what I mean. Yeah, not kind of.
yeah.
But that's not what this instrument does. I can't, you know. But because you know
Spirits, Keith Jarrett's Spirits. It's an album he recorded in his garage, and he was never going to release it. And his friend heard it and said, "Oh, you got to release it." But it's brilliant. He plays everything like flutes and, but he plays tabla on it. So originally I got it because it had tabla on it. So I got it
you thought,
and listened to it, and it's like, oh, it's horrendous. So I threw it away, and then a few years later, somebody got me that album for Christmas.
Okay.
And I was like, one of those presents you open, like, thanks for that. Anyway, I put it on, it blew my mind.
There you go.
You know, it's like, but he's because of the way he's playing it with mallets, and my mind was closed at that time. Because of all the learning that I'd done within the Indian genre. And then it was like, wow, it's just amazing what he does.
No, that's great. That's really
Spirits,
important.
Keith Jarrett.
Yeah.